Chapter 3. The kids watched Jonathan's mom drive off. She had told them to meet her outside to go home in exactly 3 hours. The kids complained, after she left, that was nowhere near enough time. But that's just how it went at times. The trio walked into the mall, each carrying a small duffel/diaper bag. There were a lot of kids there today, it being Saturday and all. Now that she thought she knew what was happening, Kaya wasn't at all surprised to see that each and every one of them, boy, girl, toddler and teen, was diapered. Many more of them were also accompanied by parents than Kaya was used to seeing. She supposed that, because of the diapers, children were more dependent on a parent to change them if necessary. Which made Kaya wonder what would happen when her or one of the others needed changing. They had diaper bags, were they going to change themselves? Kaya suddenly had an unsettling thought, would the 3 kids be required to change each other? She didn't think she could take Jonathan changing her. Nor did she think she could take having to change him. She had never seen a boy in that position, nor did she want one to see her that way. Even if it was someone like Jonathan, one of her best friends since kindergarten. Kaya hoped she was wrong on this one. Fortunately, the subject didn't come up for quite a while. In the meantime, Cindy and Kaya talked about the latest fashions. Jonathan hung back behind them, not interested in the girl talk. Just like with breakfast that morning, everything they did was almost exactly the same aside from the diapers. The only real differences were because of them. Part of the conversation got into the ongoing fashion controversy, exposed or hidden. It had become a recent fad to wear clothing that hid a person's diapers. Kaya had to admit as she looked around at some of the teenagers in the mall, both boys and girls, if she didn't know otherwise she'd think they weren't wearing any diapers at all. On the other hand, some thought it looked cute to make their diapers obvious to anybody who glanced in their general direction. Thinking about it, Kaya decided Cindy had taken the more exhibitionist route. Her skirt was fairly short, making the cloth diapers and plastic pants underneath more visible than a slightly longer skirt would do. Jonathan seemed to have no opinion either way. He wore diapers, and he wore clothes over them. Nothing special intended. Kaya decided she liked the hidden look herself. The friends traversed the mall, visiting clothing stores, bookstores, and the like. After an hour and a half, they went to the food court to grab lunch. On the way they talked about the various purchases their allowances afforded them. Jonathan went on a bit about some comics and a movie he bought. Cindy got herself a new book from a series she liked as well as some new outfits. Kaya had found a nice, inexpensive necklace in a jewelry store. Kaya was in for a shock when she got her food and sat down. When her bottom landed in the chair she felt a cold squishy feeling on her butt. She hadn't been in diapers even half a day but somehow she instinctively knew that she was soaking wet. When had she peed herself? She didn't even remember any feeling that she had to pee at all the entire day. Apparently her face showed some of her surprise because Jonathan asked if anything was the matter. No, nothing, she said hesitantly, I just noticed I'm, kind of wet. Yeah, me too, said Jonathan, after we eat let's go to the changing rooms and get changed. Changing rooms? Kaya wondered. Guess this was it. Moment of truth. Was she going to have to change her best friend's diapers? Or was there another surprise in store for her? The kids finished their lunch and threw away their trash before heading to where Kaya remembered the mall's bathrooms usually were. There was a men's room and a women's room. However, where the family restroom, where parents could take kids for the potty and or diaper changings, was a slightly bigger room marked diapers. There was a line of about half a dozen kids standing in front of the door. The younger kids in line had adults standing by them. Though some of the kids, mostly teens like them, were there without parental supervision. Kaya stood in line. Normally a familiar situation, this was the first time she remembered standing in line here after already going to the bathroom. It wasn't so bad though. Unlike in past experience, where Kaya would be near panicked with pressure on her bladder or bowels, she could just lounge about until her time with nothing more uncomfortable than a damp feeling along her diaper area. The one downside to having people who've already done their business is that there was a definite odor in the air. Kaya couldn't help but smell the dirty diapers of some of the kids in the line. It was a powerful stink. Under most circumstances, the smell might have made her gag. But standing in line, waiting for her own chance to get changed, Kaya realized it didn't really bother her all that much. It was almost as if this was completely natural. Which made her wonder if she was already getting used to this strange new world she'd wound up in. However, while the smell was one thing, the sound was another completely. Standing in line, she heard what sounded much like a fart from someone around her. It sounded as though it came from behind her, but when she looked it was just Cindy and Jonathan, like before. It took a second for Kaya to realize Jonathan was suddenly very red in the face. Not from embarrassment, but from effort. His knees were slightly bent and Kaya thought she heard him grunt. Johnny, she said. With a sigh, Cindy spoke up. Kaya, you know it's pointless to talk to him while he's pooping. Kaya was shocked. It was obvious what he was doing, but all the same it hadn't occurred to Kaya until that very moment he was soiling himself. Jonathan finished after a minute or so. He straightened up and looked at his friends as if nothing were wrong. He even resumed his conversation with Cindy right from where he had left off. By this point, Kaya had stopped being surprised by such events. Of course they wouldn't find anything wrong with Jonathan pooping in his diaper. For those two, as well as every kid here, soiling themselves was an everyday occurrence. Kaya suddenly hoped she'd be able to fix this before she wound up experiencing this everyday occurrence. A minute and a half after Jonathan had made his mess, the door to the diapers room opened and several people walked out. It seemed like a huge crowd, but Kaya noticed they walked off in smaller groups of about 2 or so people. Kaya realized this meant that people went into the rooms in groups, performing several diaper changes at once. A man appeared in the doorway and started ushering people into the room. After Kaya, Cindy, and Jonathan were inside, he closed the door. Whoever else got into line would have to wait until they were done. Inside the diapers room was 2 rows of about 4 changing tables each. There were also attendants at each table. Though Kaya saw they stepped aside when a child who was supervised approached. Cindy and Jonathan found open tables and laid down upon them after handing the attendants their diaper bags. Kaya followed their example and did the same at an empty table. The attendant she handed her bag to was a young woman who looked like she was in college. She undid Kaya's leg snaps and opened her pants, exposing the wet diaper. She reached into Kaya's bag and pulled out one of the diapers as well as changing supplies. Kaya tried her best not to blush while the girl changed her, but her embarrassment must have shown. "Let me guess," the girl asked, "you're not used to being changed by people other than your parents, huh?" Truth was, Kaya wasn't even used to that. But she silently nodded. As the changing table attendant did her work, Kaya looked around. She saw the table across from her and witnessed a girl no older than 12 getting a dirty diaper changed by her mom. Another table she saw a 15-year-old boy getting a wiped by an attendant. She quickly turned her head elsewhere when she got a look at his diaper area. That was just something she was not prepared to see. She craned her neck to try and see her friends. They were both on tables front her, but she saw Cindy lying flat on her back on the table up front and across from her. Cindy looked at Kaya as the young man changing her struggled a bit with the pins on her cloth diapers. It was clear by her face Cindy was trying not to laugh. After the routine of wipe, powder, diaper, the attendant re-snapped Kaya's pants and helped her up off the table. She saw Jonathan was getting his new diaper on while Cindy's attendant, who had finally managed to remove the wet diaper, was having trouble putting on the dry one. After a few moments he finally managed it and helped Cindy into her plastic panties after she stood up. He put the wet diaper into a plastic baggie and put it into Cindy's bag. Cindy and Jonathan both took some money out of pockets in their bags and gave some to the attendants. Again following them, she reached into her own bag and handed some of the money over to the woman who had changed her. The college girl took it with a smile, though her demeanor suggested she had been waiting longer than she was used to. Kaya suddenly realized this was the purpose of her mom's tip money. Makes sense, Kaya figured. If my job were to clean up after kids who'd peed and pooped themselves, I'd think I deserved a little something extra too. Kaya looked and saw all the changing attendants were about college age or late 20s. She realized that changing diapers like this was probably this world's equivalent to burger flipping. Something relatively easy that most anybody could do. She joined Cindy and Jonathan as they walked outside. Kaya, thinking she was getting the hang of this place, tried striking up a conversation. "Can you believe that guy that was changing you?" she asked Cindy. "I know," Cindy said with a laugh, "he must be new or something." "Well," Jonathan suggested, "maybe he doesn't see cloth too often. Disposables are getting a lot of popularity these days." "I've heard," Cindy said, "I've always wanted to try them. But my mom and dad are so old-fashioned." That was true. In the real world, Kaya often heard Cindy complain that her parents didn't like her wearing tight clothes or anything too suggestive. Which just as often meant she did just that. Her exposed look was probably part rebellion. She couldn't control her diapers, but she could control how they looked. "I mean," Cindy continued, "disposables are getting more and more advanced all the time, right? But, my parents, they're harmful to the environment. Blah blah blah." "Actually, that's not so true anymore," Jonathan explained. "Diapers are being made now that are more easily biodegradable, so landfills aren't stuck with them for so long. Maybe they'll even make something to take care of the ones that are already there," Kaya suggested, hoping she wasn't sounding stupid. Fortunately, her friends looked at her and nodded, thinking she had a good idea. "You two should come with us next time we go to the supermarket, tell my mom all this stuff." The rest of the time passed normally. A few more stores, a few more buys. When Jonathan's mother arrived to take them home, they begged for just a few more minutes. But it was no good. She had the kids pile into the car and took them each home. When Kaya got home, she went inside and walked up to her room. As interesting as this diaper world was, it was time to set things right. As Kaya walked to her bedroom, she could swear she heard her mom's voice from the bathroom. She almost sounded like she was praising someone. Kaya put her ear to the door and listened as her mom showered praise on her son for successfully using the toilet. Kaya had to cover her mouth to stop from laughing. Just as she thought when she had done this in the first place, the idea of her 18-year-old brother being complimented for using the potty was just hilarious to her. She finally let herself laugh out loud a bit when she got to her bedroom. When she'd calmed down, she went to her computer and turned it on. She tapped her foot on the floor as it loaded up. When it finally finished booting, she immediately clicked the desktop shortcut going to the game and waited for IT to boot up. When it started up and went through the annoying logos of the game's makers, Kaya went to Continue Building and found her world's file. She skimmed through all the questions she had already answered until she found the one she was looking for. At what age range are the people of your world toilet trained? Her eyes widened a bit when she looked over at the number in the answer box. Answer, 2 to 3. Her world was set for people of 2 or 3 years to be potty trained. That couldn't be right. Last night she'd set that to 18. Hadn't she? Her head was spinning. She didn't know what was going on anymore. Was she dreaming? Was this real? Kaya pinched her hand and yelped a bit. It had hurt. But then, was the real world the one where she'd potty trained at 2.5? Or the one where she wouldn't use a toilet for about 4 years? Had she set the game for people to potty train at the end of the teenage years or their toddler years? Kaya turned the game off without changing anything. She walked over and sat down on her changing table. She looked down at the drawers that contained her supply of diapers and wipes and such. Were those supposed to be there? Or weren't they? Tears formed at Kaya's eyes as her confusion grew. Had she spent the whole day confusing reality with a dream? She simply didn't know anymore. She laid herself down on the changing table and cried herself to sleep.